The towel slipped from my hands, but I didn't flinch. Her laugh, a dry, hollow chuckle that clung to the laundry room tiles like mildew, echoed between us. "You're lucky I even let you touch me." That's what she said. Like I was some charity case who'd won a raffle. Like decades of providing, fixing, covering her mistakes, and bailing her out of maxed-out credit cards were just a tax she tolerated. She turned, humming, tossing her blouse into the dryer as if she hadn't just detonated something. I watched her, not angry, not even sad, something quieter, sharper. I folded the last t-shirt, an old one from the state fair we went to, before the veneers, before the Pilates instructor with the ridiculous name, before she stopped asking how my day was. I set it on the stack and walked out without a word. Halfway down the hall, her phone buzzed. She giggled, a little too soft, a little too young for her age. That sound used to make me smile. Now it just reminded me that good liars always enjoy the setup. I caught my reflection in the hall mirror. Sure, I had a few more wrinkles, moved slower than I did at 40. But I built machines that carved titanium within half a hair's width. I led a team of 20 who didn't dare miss a measurement. I wasn't some desperate man hoping for scraps of affection. In this house, I was a placeholder. And placeholders don't argue. We execute. Downstairs, my office waited, quiet, dim, and organized in the way she hated. The drawer slid open. Inside sat a small oak box I'd carved myself after retiring. Smooth edges. Brass hinges. It was supposed to hold cufflinks. Instead, it was going to hold something much more valuable. I flipped open my laptop. No rush. No theatrics. Just a man doing what he'd always done, cataloging, protecting, cleaning up someone else's mess. The folder was still there, waiting. First came the emails, from her realtor friend Celeste, full of fun weekends in Ridge Hill. Dates that, funny enough, matched her so-called training retreats. Then the rental car receipt in her name, with a second driver listed. Not me. Next, the texts. She'd never noticed I synced her phone to the family iPad. She thought it was for Netflix in the guest room. To me, it was leverage. "Can't wait to see you outside the sheets for once LOL." Thumbs up reply. Followed by a shirtless mirror selfie from a hotel bathroom I recognized instantly. The birthstone again. I could almost smell the lavender air freshener they used to cover the stink of desperation. That night, she came down in her smug little robe, playing affectionate wife. "You didn't say goodnight," she said. "I figured you were tired of touching me." I replied, smiling. She blinked, muttered something about me being dramatic, and went upstairs. I waited until the house fell silent. Then I sat back at my desk, opened the oak box, and started printing. It was still empty then, but not for long. WY morning. The oak box wasn't empty anymore. A stack of neatly clipped email printouts rested inside, followed by screenshots in chronological order, each one stamped, dated, and labeled like evidence in a courtroom. I wasn't rushing. I was building a timeline. The kind that makes a liar choke when they see it all laid out in black and white. Vanessa, that's her name, always thought I didn't notice details. She once told a room full of our friends, "You move like you're buffering." They laughed. I smiled. Because slowness isn't weakness, it's precision. Her little contractor boyfriend made his first appearance in the file mid-March. Back then, she was stuck in a board meeting at 1:42 p.m. Meanwhile, her location tag had her parked outside the Burstone Hotel. He'd sent her a message. "I needed that last night. Let's do a quick lunch before I head home." She replied with a heart emoji and, "Same. You're my escape." Escape from what exactly? A mortgage she didn't pay? A man who fixed every leak, filed every tax return, and kept her reckless spending off her credit record? Funny thing about betrayal, it's not just the act. It's the arrogance. By lunch, she was back home, making herself a smoothie in our kitchen, tossing me a casual, "Hey, you should try protein powder. It's good for your age." I smiled, told her I'd stick with my coffee, and mentally noted the way she didn't even flinch at lying in broad daylight. Over the next week, I kept adding to the box. A printed receipt here, a forwarded voicemail there. She once left her phone on the counter while taking a shower. I plugged it into my laptop without hesitation. She had no passcode on her photos, just a sloppy Face ID setup that worked if you angled the phone at her sleeping face. I found a picture of them in the mirror at a bar downtown, him kissing her neck, her holding the camera like she was documenting a vacation. Date stamped the same night she told me she was visiting her sister. The irony? She couldn't even keep her story straight. The sister in question had posted Instagram stories of herself in another state entirely that night. That's when I knew I was dealing with an amateur. And amateurs don't just get caught, they get dismantled. But here's the thing. I wasn't going to storm into the kitchen and slam the evidence on the counter. Not yet. That's her move, chaos and drama. Mine is patience. Because people like Vanessa, they don't quit on their own. They push until they feel safe. And then, when they think you're harmless, they get sloppy. And when she got sloppy, that's when I'd end IT'd. IT happened on a Thursday evening. The kind of day where nothing feels important enough to remember. She walked in wearing a dress I hadn't seen before. Tight, low cut, with a gold necklace that I had seen before, but only once. Months ago, when she claimed she'd lost it during a weekend trip with her girlfriends. Dinner with clients, she said, tossing her purse on the counter. Late one, so don't wait up. Her tone was casual, but her eyes darted to the oak box on my desk before sliding away again. She didn't know what was inside, but she knew it wasn't cufflinks. I nodded. Clients, huh? Which ones? She blinked, then smiled. You don't know them. Of course I didn't. That was the point. She grabbed a wine glass, poured herself a half pour, just enough to calm nerves before a performance, and checked her phone. A text from Em flashed across the screen before she tilted it away from me. 5 minutes later, she was gone. I waited exactly 7 minutes, then stepped into the garage, got in my truck, and pulled up the GPS tracker I'd hidden in her Range Rover 3 weeks earlier. She'd had a habit of leaving her car at friends' houses for hours on end, so I'd installed the device under the wheel well during one of her Pilates classes. Her car wasn't headed downtown toward the steakhouse she'd mentioned in passing. It was headed in the opposite direction, straight toward Ridge Hill. I didn't follow her. That's not my style. I just marked the address, Burstone Hotel. Again, the next morning, she tried to cover her tracks. Dinner ran late, she said, yawning into her coffee. Yeah? Which steakhouse did you end up at? I asked. She hesitated a fraction of a second before saying, Silver and Vine. I nodded like I believed her. Then, while she was in the shower, I pulled up the Silver and Vine website and called their hostess. Reservation under Vanessa Turner, I said. A pause. Then the hostess replied, Sorry, sir, no one by that name was in last night. I thanked her and hung up. No anger. Just another document for the oak box. That night, I placed a single printed screenshot of her GPS location from the tracker inside the box. Right on top. Not hidden. Not locked away. Just there. Because eventually, she'd snoop. And when she did, I wanted her to know, without a word, that the ground under her was already crumbling. That IT happened on a Sunday afternoon. I was in the garage, elbow deep in the old Triumph motorcycle I'd been restoring for years, when I heard the faint creak of my office door upstairs. Now, normally, the creak wouldn't mean much. But Vanessa never went into my office. She once told me the smell of old books and printer ink made her feel claustrophobic. That, and she didn't like the way the blinds always stayed half closed. I set down the wrench, wiped my hands on a rag, and listened. The silence after the creak was long, long enough to picture her standing there, eyes scanning the desk, fingers hovering just above the oak box. Another faint sound, the click of the box's brass hinges. I smiled to myself. She'd taken the bait. For the next 10 minutes, I stayed put. Let her snoop. Let her see the stack of evidence and wonder what else I had that she couldn't see. Paranoia is a beautiful thing. It does half your work for you. Eventually, the hinges clicked shut again, and her footsteps retreated down the hall. By the time I walked back into the house, she was in the kitchen, cutting lemons like she hadn't just stumbled across the wrecking ball aimed at her life. Hey, she said, all smiles. One iced tea. I nodded, took the glass, and washed her over the rim. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Over the next week, her routine shifted. She was more careful with her phone. She stopped leaving her laptop open. Her client dinners became shorter, almost cautious. And every so often, I'd catch her glancing at me like she was trying to measure exactly how much I knew. That was good. I wanted her nervous, but not scared enough to bolt. Not yet. On Thursday, she made her first attempt at counterattack. I came home to find her in the living room with a pile of my mail spread across the coffee table. What's this? She asked, holding up a bank statement from one of my personal accounts. Mail, I said. Yeah, but why do you have this account? I didn't know about it. You didn't ask. Her lips pressed into a thin line. So, what else don't I know about? I shrugged. Enough. That word hung between us like smoke. She didn't push further, but her eyes told me she'd heard the message. I'm not as exposed as she thought. The next day, I slipped another document into the oak box. This time, a printed copy of a hotel receipt from her credit card, complete with a signature that matched her handwriting. I left it right on top. By Saturday morning, she'd stopped making small talk. Instead, she moved through the house like we were two strangers sharing an elevator, polite but distant. She was trying to figure out if the oak box was the full extent of my knowledge or just the tip of something worse. It was time to give her an answer. That night, I set my plan in motion. We were sitting in the den. She was scrolling her phone, pretending to watch a home renovation show. I had my laptop open, not really working, just waiting for the right moment. Hey, I said suddenly. How's Celeste? Her head jerked up. What? Your realtor friend. You two still planning any of those weekend retreats? Her mouth opened, then closed. She set her phone down slowly. Why are you asking about Celeste? No reason. Just curious if she's still booking Ridge Hill for training seminars. Her knuckles whitened around the throw pillow. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. I closed the laptop and leaned forward. You've been sloppy, Vanessa. You always were. You think erasing a few texts and clearing your browser history erases the pattern, but it doesn't. People leave fingerprints. And you, my dear, have been leaving them all over Ridge Hill. For a long moment, the only sound was the TV. Then she laughed, a brittle, humorless sound. So what? You're going to throw a tantrum? Pack your bags? You wouldn't know what to do without me. I smiled, not at her words, but at how wrong they were. I know exactly what to do without you. I've been preparing for it for months. Her eyes narrowed. What does that mean? It means you should probably stop assuming I'm the only one who'd be ruined if this got out. She opened her mouth, then shut it. The flicker of doubt in her eyes was almost satisfying enough to end the game right there. Almost. I stood, stretched, and headed toward the kitchen. Tea? I asked over my shoulder. Sure, she said, voice barely above a whisper. That night, she didn't sleep well. I could tell by the way she kept shifting in bed, exhaling sharply every time I moved. At one point, she got up and went to the bathroom for nearly 20 minutes. When she came back, I could smell the faint scent of printer ink. The next morning, I checked the oak box. Sure enough, one document was missing, the GPS screenshot from the Burstone visit. She'd taken it, probably to see if she could figure out how I got it. I smiled, because the real tracker, the one that mattered, was still feeding me her location in real time. The missing printout? Just bait. By noon, she was out shopping. By 2, she was parked at a little cafe on the other side of town. Alone, probably trying to decide her next move. Mine was already in motion. That evening, while she was still out, I sat at my desk and drafted 3 emails. One to our accountant, one to my attorney, and one to her brokerage's managing partner. None of them were accusations. Not yet. Just concerns and potential conflicts of interest, all backed by copies of her client dinner, receipts, and GPS logs showing her at hotels on company time. Enough to start whispers, not enough to burn the whole thing down, yet. Then I printed one more document for the oak box. This one was different. No timestamps, no receipts. Just a single sheet of paper with 4 words, typed in bold. I know everything, Vanessa. I laid it on top, closed the lid, and left it exactly where she'd find it. The game wasn't about proof anymore. It was about pressure, and I was going to make sure she felt it, every second of every day, until the exact moment I decided to end her. Why the following Thursday, I could feel the shift in her. Her casual arrogance was thinning out like cheap perfume. She wasn't quite desperate yet, but she'd moved past the ignore it and it'll go away phase into something closer to strategy. Problem was, she'd never played against someone who didn't tell you their next move. That morning, she tried to start a normal conversation over breakfast. I was thinking we should go to the lake house this weekend, she said, pouring herself coffee. Which one? I asked without looking up from my paper. Her eyes narrowed. We only have one. Exactly. I folded the paper. And it's under my name alone. Why the sudden interest? She bristled. It's been months since we were up there. I thought it'd be nice. Nice for who? I asked. She set down her coffee with just a little too much force. You're being paranoid. I didn't respond. I just slid my plate away, stood, and left the room. Silence has a way of peeling skin when someone's itching for a fight. By noon, I knew what she was doing. Her Range Rover's tracker showed her heading to a law office across town. Not our attorney, someone new. She parked there for almost 2 hours, then stopped by the bank on her way home. That night, she didn't mention either errand. Friday evening, she made her move. I came home to find her in the kitchen, wearing that red dress she only pulled out when she wanted something big. On the counter between us was a manila folder. "We need to talk," she said, voice smooth, steady. "About us, our finances, our future." She tapped the folder. I had my attorney draw up a few documents. Just adjustments, really. For security. In case anything happens to you. I almost laughed. In case anything happens to me. She was trying to get me to sign my own noose. I opened the folder. Inside were 3 documents. One granting her power of attorney, another amending the trust to give her sole access to certain accounts, and a third that quietly shifted ownership of the lake house to joint status. I closed the folder and slid it back across the counter. "No." She blinked. "No. No, Vanessa. You're going to have to do better than that." Her jaw tightened. "If you're going to be this stubborn, we can just let the lawyers handle it." "We will," I said, "but they'll be mine." The flicker of something crossed her face. Fear, maybe. Or realization. Either way, she tried to cover it with a smirk. "You think you're smarter than me." "No," I said, "I know I am." That night, she went to bed early, or at least pretended to. I stayed up in the office, letting the desk lamp burn while I sorted through the oak box. The stack of evidence had grown fat enough to bow the lid. Some people think revenge is about rage. They're wrong. Rage is noisy, sloppy. Revenge is quiet. It's methodical. It's a scalpel, not a hammer. And right now, I had the scalpel in hand. Saturday morning, she was suddenly sweet. Too sweet. She brought me coffee in bed, kissed my cheek, even sat on the edge of the mattress like we were in the honeymoon stage again. I was thinking, she began. "Always dangerous," I said. She ignored the jab. "We could invite some friends over for dinner. You know, make things feel normal again." I knew what this was. Damage control. Make me look crazy if I blew up at her in front of people. Play the doting wife in public while she positioned herself for whatever she thought was coming. "Sure," I said. "Invite whoever you want." Her smile froze for a fraction of a second. She'd expected me to refuse. That night, the dining room filled with wine glasses and polite laughter. Vanessa worked the room like a politician. Hand on my shoulder here. Inside joke with a friend there. Among the guests was Celeste, the realtor friend, and, surprise, surprise, the contractor boyfriend himself. They shook my hand like we were meeting for the first time. I held his gaze just long enough to let him know I recognized him. He blinked first. Dinner went as she planned. Laughs, stories, just enough warmth to make her look like the innocent party if this ever went to court. But when dessert came out, I made my move. "You know," I said to Celeste, "I really appreciate all the time you've spent helping Vanessa with those weekend retreats." Her fork froze halfway to her mouth. "Retreats." Vanessa shot me a glare sharp enough to cut glass. "Don't be weird," she said quickly. "Oh, I'm not," I replied, still looking at Celeste. "Just thought it was nice of you to book her at the Burstone all those times." Celeste's eyes darted to Vanessa, then back to me. She didn't say another word the rest of the night. When the guests left, the house went silent. Vanessa stood in the kitchen, back to me, shoulders tight. "What the hell was that?" she asked without turning around. "Conversation," I said. She spun to face me. "You're trying to embarrass me." "No, Vanessa," I said, stepping closer. "I'm reminding you that I've been 3 steps ahead since the day I bought that oak box. And I'm just deciding where to stop." Her voice cracked, just slightly. "You wouldn't ruin me. You've been ruining yourself for months," I said. "I'm just keeping the score." That night, she didn't come to bed. I found her in the den, curled up on the couch with a blanket, phone in hand. She pretended to be asleep when I passed by. I didn't call her on it. Instead, I went back to the office and drafted another email, this one to her brokerage's HR department. Again, not an accusation, just a concern about professionalism regarding frequent unexplained absences. I attached a spreadsheet of her GPS logs, labeled with dates and times. I didn't send it yet. I just saved it in drafts. Sometimes the threat is more powerful than the act. Sunday morning, she was quiet. She made breakfast, set it on the table, and sat across from me without eating. "What do you want?" she asked finally. Everything, I said. Her eyes narrowed. That's not an answer. Sure it is. I want everything you think you're entitled to. I want the lake house, the accounts, the respect you burned. And when I've got them, you can have whatever's left. She looked at me for a long time, then stood, walked away, and didn't speak to me for the rest of the day. Good. Silence meant she was thinking. Thinking meant she was second-guessing. And second-guessing meant she was getting sloppy again. And sloppy, for me, is as good as signing the confession at BY the next Friday. I could see the decision forming in her. She'd realized she couldn't outwait me in silence, so she was going to try and rewrite the narrative, drag me into the open, but on her terms. She started with the soft warm-up, telling friends I'd been distant lately, that work stress was changing me. The kind of harmless-seeming gossip that sounds like concern but is really planting seeds. Then came the invite. We've been invited to the Riverstone Gala next weekend, she said casually over breakfast. Charity thing. Everyone important in my office will be there. I didn't need to ask why she suddenly wanted me in a tux. It was obvious. This was going to be her stage. Smile in public, whisper to mutual acquaintances about my paranoia, make me look like the unhinged husband while she played the misunderstood professional. I nodded. Of course. Can't wait. She blinked, probably expecting me to resist. That was her first mistake, assuming I didn't know exactly what she was doing. The week leading up to the gala, I didn't mention the oak box once. I let her think she was regaining ground. She even started humming in the kitchen again, the same little victory hum I'd heard after she'd get away with a lie. Meanwhile, I was setting my own stage. 3 days before the event, I met with my attorney. We reviewed the timeline, the documents, the GPS logs. He slid a manila envelope back across the table to me. If you want a file, this is airtight, he said. You'll keep the assets, the house, and she'll walk with nothing but her personal debt. Not yet, I said. We're waiting for her to step on the landmine. He grinned. I assume you've placed it already? Oh, it's been sitting there for months, I told him. She just hasn't realized she's standing on it. The night of the gala, she went all in. Floor-length silver dress, perfect hair, that smile she used to save for real estate closings where the commission was going to be obscene. In the car, she made small talk, little touches on my arm, laughing too loudly at my dry remarks. I gave her nothing but polite nods in return. The Riverstone Club was packed. The kind of event where everyone's pretending to listen to the speeches while scoping out who's networking with who. And right on cue, she went to work, looping her arm through mine as we made the rounds, introducing me to people I'd never met with glowing half-truths about how much she appreciated my support lately. Then, during the second course, she struck. We were seated with 3 couples from her office, including her managing partner, a man I'd exchanged maybe 5 words with before. It's been a rough few months at home, she said lightly, swirling her wine. Logan's just been, well, stressed. You know how work can get. The women at the table gave sympathetic nods. The men smirked knowingly. But, she added, giving my arm a squeeze, I think we're getting back on track. Right, honey? She tilted her head toward me, all eyes at the table shifting in my direction. She wanted me to play along, to nod and smile, so she could own the narrative. I smiled. Oh, we're definitely on track. Her smile widened, until I pulled my phone from my pocket. In fact, I said, laying it face up on the white tablecloth, I've been keeping track. On the screen was a GPS map with pins marking every visit to the Burstone Hotel over the past 4 months. Names of the accompanying guests. Dates. Times. The managing partner leaned in, brows knitting. What's this? Just a personal project, I said, still smiling, cataloging my wife's dedication to client relations. The table went silent. Vanessa's smile collapsed into a tight, brittle line. Logan, not here, she started, but I cut her off. Why not here? These are your people. Shouldn't they see how hard you work? A fork clinked against a plate. One of her co-workers coughed into his napkin. The managing partner straightened in his seat, eyes darting from me to Vanessa. She grabbed her wine, downed what was left, and muttered something about needing air. She left the table without looking back. I stayed, chatting politely with the rest of the table for another 10 minutes before excusing myself. Outside, she was waiting by the valet stand, arms crossed. You think you're clever, she hissed. I don't think, I said. I know. She stepped closer. You embarrassed me in front of my colleagues. No, Vanessa. You embarrassed yourself. I just provided the visual aids. Her jaw clenched so tight I could hear it click. You're going to regret this, she said finally. Maybe, I said, handing the valet my ticket. But you'll regret it first. The drive home was silent except for the sound of her nails tapping against her phone screen. I knew what she was doing, damage control. Texting Celeste. Maybe the contractor, maybe her managing partner. Trying to reframe the evening before it settled in people's memories. She had no idea that earlier that day, I'd sent a separate email to her firm's compliance department with all the same evidence, and a few pieces she hadn't seen yet. Tonight was just the preview. Monday morning would be the feature presentation. When we got home, she went straight upstairs without a word. I followed her as far as the landing, then veered into my office. The oak box was still on the desk, lid closed. I opened it, removed the sheet of paper with "I know everything" in bold, and replaced it with something new, a single folded note. Inside it read, "Tomorrow, you find out how this ends." She saw it the next morning. I could tell by the way she moved around the kitchen, too quickly, too quietly. She didn't ask me what it meant. She didn't have to. At 8:42 a.m., the tracker showed her leaving the house. At 9:15, I got a call from my attorney. Her firm just opened a formal investigation, he said. HR, compliance, and the managing partner are all looped in. From what I hear, she walked in and everyone went silent. Good, I said. Let's give them the weekend to stew on it. That night, she came home late. No explanation, no apology, just a stiff, mechanical, "I'm going to bed." I didn't follow. I stayed downstairs, sipping coffee and thinking about how close we were to the endgame. She thought tonight at the gala had been my big play. She thought the oak box was the whole story. She still hadn't realized that the real hit wasn't going to be public embarrassment or a firm investigation. It was going to be the way I left her with nothing. Not just broke, beaten. And the beautiful part? She was going to walk right into it herself. Monday morning, she made her move. I was at my desk when I heard the front door slam and the click of heels on the hardwood. She came straight into the office, folder in hand, and dropped it onto my desk. "You've left me no choice," she said. Inside were divorce papers, not the simple split and move on kind. These were aggressive. She was going for half the assets, spousal support, and even my pension. I didn't even look up from my coffee. "Cute," I said, sliding the folder back to her. "This isn't a joke, Logan. You've been impossible. You humiliated me, And you've been cheating for months," I cut in. "Which, unfortunately for you, is extremely well documented. Oh, and before you get too excited about my accounts," I tapped the stack of papers in my own drawer. "You might want to ask your lawyer why they're suddenly empty." Her eyes flickered. "What did you do?" "Everything I was legally entitled to," I said. "The accounts in my name? Closed. The lake house. Transferred months ago to a trust you can't touch. Your name's still on the mortgage for this place, though. Thought you might enjoy that." She tried to mask the panic, but it was there. The tight swallow, the way she gripped the back of the chair like it was the only thing holding her up. "You can't do this." "Vanessa," I said, leaning back, "I already have." The HR investigation at her firm moved fast. By Wednesday, she was temporarily suspended pending review. By Friday, her phone was blowing up with messages from colleagues, some supportive, most avoiding her entirely. I didn't gloat. Not out loud. I just went about my days as if her implosion was background noise. That weekend, she tried one last tactic, tears. "We can fix this," she said over dinner she'd actually cooked herself. "We've been through too much to just." "Vanessa," I interrupted, "you burn this down." I just collected the ashes. The fork clattered from her hand. She didn't cry again. She didn't bring up reconciliation. Something in her finally understood this wasn't a negotiation point. 2 weeks later, she was gone. Not in the dramatic bags at the doorway. No, I came home to find her closet stripped, her vanity empty, and the spare key missing from the hook. She left a single note on the counter. "You'll regret this." I almost laughed. That night, I opened the oak box one last time. The stack of evidence was complete. Emails, receipts, GPS logs, her own signed documents, even a copy of her attempted legal ambush. I placed the note on top, closed the lid, and locked it. 3 months passed. My attorney finalized the divorce. She walked away with nothing but her car, which was still being repossessed, and the debt she'd racked up in her own name. I thought that was the end, until a plain envelope showed up in my mailbox one Tuesday morning. Inside was a single photograph. Vanessa, standing behind the hostess stand at the Burstone Hotel, wearing a uniform. No note. No return address. I stared at it for a long moment, then slid it into the oak box on top of everything else. Locked it. Not out of spite. Not even out of triumph. But because it was proof that sometimes you don't need to destroy someone completely. Sometimes you just step aside and let them finish the job themselves. That's how it ended. Not with a dramatic courtroom showdown or some Hollywood-style confrontation. Just silence. And a very full oak box.